French President François Hollande first visited the Stade de France National Stadium, where last November's night of horror started, when 3 suicide bombers blew themselves up there. He then followed the path the terrorists took, visiting the 6 bars and restaurants in the trendy neighbourhood of Paris, where gunmen sprayed bullets at people while they were enjoying their Friday evening. At each location, plaques were unveiled inscribed with the names of the victims. The names were then read out loud, and a moment's silence was observed. The final commemoration ceremony took place at the Bataclan Concert Hall, where 90 people were killed. Today's events have been extremely muted, very sombre. There have been no speeches, the government very keen to make sure that this didn't turn into a political event. Today has been very much about remembering those who died and honouring their families and the survivors of last year's attacks. Victim support groups say people will need help for many years to come.
France must be able to take care of them psychologically, physically, socially. Regarding social integration for those who can't work anymore or who have had to change jobs, and also to protect children of those who were injured or killed.
On Saturday night, the Bataclan opened its doors for the first time since last year's attacks. It was a hugely symbolic and emotional show.
Tonight we have 2 tasks, 2 important tasks to do. First, to remember and honor those who lost their lives in the attack 1 year ago, and then to celebrate the life, the music that this room of enormous historic importance represents.
Scores of survivors attended the concert. Others were there to pay tribute to those who died. This woman lost 6 friends at the Bataclan last year.
It was difficult going through that door. I don't think I was the only one. Everyone was looking at each other thinking, what do we do here? We're lucky to be here, so let's get in. We think about those who are not there anymore, and we think about this place and how it was a year ago.
This weekend, France has honoured those who died, but it does so under what the French Prime Minister describes as a heavy and constant threat of more terror attacks hanging over France. Kate Parkinson, CCTV, Paris.
Well, let's bring you more now from Paris. Kate joins us live from the city. Of course, Kate, it has been a very somber day, as you mentioned there in your report, throughout Paris. But one has to wonder just how much the city itself has changed in the past year since those attacks as far as public safety is concerned.
Well, of course, I live in Paris, so I've witnessed how the city really has changed in the past 12 months. One of the most significant changes that is really hard to miss are the huge amount of soldiers and police who have been deployed not only across Paris but across the country. It is now a very regular sight to see heavily armed French soldiers and police patrolling the streets. It's also become the new normal when myself or other Parisians go to the supermarket, the shopping mall, museums. We have to present our bags. We have to sometimes unzip our coats for a body check. It's very much the new normal, and this is very much a result of what happened last year. Certainly, most Parisians will tell you that they are determined not to let the events of last November dictate the way they live. Life goes on, they say, although of course they keep the memory of those who died very close to their hearts. Almost everyone in this city knows someone who was directly affected by the terror attacks. And yet, even though there is this great sense of resilience here in Paris, this determination that life will go on, that the terrorists won't defeat Parisians, there is also this very real fear that it could happen again.
And I suppose it is from that very real fear that it could happen again that we've seen a very firm a rather firm stance from President Hollande with regards to the fight against terrorism. What specific counter-terrorism measures have been introduced in Paris, and how effective have they been?
Well, according to the government, they'll say their counter-terrorism efforts have been effective. For example, we have this state of emergency that is still in place. It was announced just hours after the November attacks. 12 months later, it is still in place. It's been repeatedly extended. And in fact, the French Prime Minister Manuel Valls is saying once again it does seem likely that the government will move to extend those emergency measures. It's probably going to be extended until after the French elections in the springtime next year. Now, this state of emergency gives police enhanced powers of arrest, enhanced powers to carry out house raids and to put people under house arrest. And the government will say that this has made it easier for them to prevent further attacks, to kick potential jihadists out of the country, to prevent people with jihadist links from entering the country. And yet, critics of the government will say, well, attacks are still happening. You only have to look back at what happened in Nice in the south of France in July, when 86 people were killed when an ISIL devotee ploughed a lorry into a crowd. It was a horrific scenes, another incredibly deadly terrorist attack here in France. And of course, that left many people questioning whether the government is indeed doing enough, and how in fact the authorities can take measures to prevent further terror attacks. These are going to be big questions here in France in the next 6 months as we gear up to these key presidential elections next April.
Right, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much, Kate Parkinson, live for us there in Paris.